Welcome to my channel. It's committed to helping more people create freedom in their life through success in sales, particularly tech sales, and the pursuit of personal development. This channel is all about helping you break into the sales industry and be successful, take your game to the next level, and make more money to create the financial freedom you're after and the impact you're trying to make. I've got an incredible guest today, Mike Weinberg. He's wrote 3 best-selling sales books, including one, New Sales Simplified, that I used to evangelize during my evangelize. I'm making up words, guys. Strike that from the film. That I used to evangelize in my Google Cloud days, because at Google Cloud, it was really a hunting role. And so for any of you guys out there who are looking to break in as a sales development rep and start your career in a hunting role, you're going to learn insights on how to develop the skill sets necessary to succeed. And if you're currently in sales today looking to take your game to the next level, you want to make more money and make a bigger impact, you're going to learn a lot from Mike today. He's got so many nuggets to share. So if you enjoy this video, which I'm going to assume you're going to, and if you get value out of it, make sure to give the like button a love tap, because the YouTube algorithm loves that too. And we'll show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Mike, thanks so much for joining. How's your day going? I'm sure you're super busy. I appreciate your time.
I'm ready to give the like button a love tap. I love that line.
Yeah, it's like
with you. Yeah.
Hey, sometimes I fumble over it because it's like I'm a quirky guy and I question, like, is this weird? But I remind myself, own it. It's different and it's important.
I'm owning it with you. So I'm thrilled to be here and talk about sales, Chris. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, it's so good to have you. And so I want to dive right into some of the value of your book, New Sales Simplified. I used it at Google Cloud to help me understand like how to prioritize a territory, how to deploy sales weapons, like a sales story, making cold calls, sending emails, and ultimately to even generate a $10 million deal that I moved off of the competition. In that case, it was actually AWS. And you played a big part in that success. So could you talk a little bit about how you ended up creating that book, and even like the title? What's New Sales Simplified really all about?
Okay, first, let me start with a big thank you for the kind words. I love that you've used the book. It's helped you. It blows my mind that I have this position where people want to talk to me about sales. New Sales Simplified is coming up on its 10-year anniversary, which is mind-boggling to me that it's been around and this successful for this long. And I never, ever, ever take it for granted when people read the book or adopt the concepts or send me notes thanking me for how they're deploying the concepts there. You asked about the title. I was thrilled that the publisher let me title this book. You know, when you're a first-time author, you don't have a ton of power. And what you learn very quickly with commercially published books is that the publisher is in charge and they get to pick the cover. I really don't love the cover of that book. I didn't have much say in the input, but 10 years later and a gazillion books sold, we're going to stick with that. But the title is very intentional. It says 2 things. One, how do we win more new sales? Because there's a whole lot of people in sales roles that are good at most aspects of the job. They're good at relationship, or they're good at product, or they're good at technical, or they're good at fighting fires. They're good at picking up a deal in the middle when one has been handed to them and there's a lot of demand, and they could be in reactive mode and, chase an opportunity or, try to close. There's all these things that a lot of sellers are good at. The thing almost universally that more people in sales struggle with, and some of it's desire and some of it's DNA and some of it's because they haven't had to do it, but it's the act of developing new business, being intentional, being strategic, being proactive, becoming a hunter to win more new sales. And I do what I do. I'm on as many airplanes as I am. I'm working like a madman because my passion, like my why in business, is helping salespeople and sales teams and companies win more new sales. Like that's my one thing. And whether I'm talking to salespeople or I'm doing sales management simplified stuff with sales leaders, that's the focus. So new sales. And then the second part of the title, simplified, it's because sales is simple. Everybody wants to make it complicated. In fact, people who struggle tend to make it sound more complex than it is. And they use that complexity as a smokescreen. So you can't figure out that they're not really trying or that they don't really know what they're doing. Your business may be complicated, but the act of developing new business, and we'll work through in this conversation the frameworks and the simplicity of having a target list, sharpening your story, prospecting best practices to get meetings, conducting great discovery consultative meetings, owning our calendar and our pipeline. Like those 5 things are incredibly simple and they're almost the same in every business. So that's where the title New Sales Simplified came from.
What a thorough answer. And I think that's such an important distinction. New sales, hunting, there are folks who might do well in an account management role. It's a little more cushy or supporting a current client, but hunting is totally different. So that brings me to wanting to ask a burning question. What
Yeah.
are the 16 pitfalls of new business development, or the ways to guarantee you will fail in new business development?
Yeah, you're going right for chapter 2, and it's so funny that you asked me so specifically
Hey, we don't
because
have to move too fast, though. Is there
yeah,
anything
that's
else
good.
you want to touch on before that, or are you
Oh,
ready to
no,
dive
no,
in?
let's go there because this is I mean, that's
Okay.
part of why I wrote the book. What's so funny
Yeah.
timing-wise, about 35 minutes ago, I sent a copy of that chapter, chapter 2 from New Sales Simplified. It's called The Not So Sweet 16 Reasons
Yes.
That We Don't Develop More Business.
Beautiful.
And I have a client, a very large company that you've heard of, that is having their sellers read that chapter as pre-work to an upcoming in-person session I'm doing for hundreds of people. And I wanted to get kind of them, let them have a little bit of a wake-up call and do a little self-reflection and introspection in terms of where are they potentially struggling. And honestly, I don't have those 16 items memorized in order in my head, but I'm happy to run through some of the big ones with you. And it's interesting, that I wrote the book 11 years ago now, right? It's been out 10 years. And those 16 reasons have changed a little bit. Some of the reasons that were more prominent a decade ago why salespeople were struggling, I've replaced and upgraded some of those with newer things that I'm seeing. But at the end of the day, there are a couple significant causes that salespeople aren't winning more new sales. These are obstacles. And what's intriguing to me is they tend to be the same dozen to 16 reasons across industries, across continents, across size of companies. These are things that get in the way. So I'll just throw a couple of them out, and then you can tell me which ones you want to dive into, and we can unpack.
Perfect.
But the first one, and it's very popular, and it's number one in that list, is they don't know how. It's salespeople that haven't had to or don't know how to hunt. They've always been in a hot industry or where they were fed leads or they could operate in a reactive mode, and they didn't have to what I'll call self-generate sales opportunities. The opportunities would materialize. They would be handed to them. So that's a big reason they don't succeed, is because they're ignorant in a kind way of using that word, in the honest sense. They just don't know where to go or what to do. They don't have a plan. And then I'll jump ahead to one of the biggest reasons that salespeople don't win more new business. And this has nothing to do with skills or even desire. It's just reality, and it's very practical. They live in reactive mode and they forget their primary job. They come in every day and they see themselves as a firefighter, and they clean out their inbox and they chase customer service issues. Or if they have a heavy account management burden, they get caught up in all kinds of service. And it could be high level service, important service. Sometimes it looks like firefighting. Sometimes it looks like making a delivery to a customer. Sometimes it looks like project management or onboarding a new client. It takes on lots of different formats. But whatever those are, they get in the way of salespeople dedicating significant chunks of their calendar to the only 3 sales verbs that matter. And I say this almost every day to somebody, like I'll preach this until I'm dying. There are only 3 verbs that matter if you're in new business development sales: create, advance, close. Our job is to drive new revenue. It's not to babysit a customer base or caretake a territory. If you're in sales, even if you manage a book of business, a portfolio, or a territory, your job is still to drive new revenue, to grow. That's why they let us make more money in sales. And the way you do that, by being proactive and strategic and intentional, is you create new opportunities and put them in the top of the funnel. You create opportunities at the top of the pipeline. You advance existing opportunities. People we're already talking to that have some interest that's getting warmer. You work to advance those. And then the third verb, you try to close. We got to take hot deals and we got to get them closed. And most salespeople spend an inordinate amount of their time not creating, advancing, and closing. They're working. They may work 50, 60 hours a week. And when they put their head on their pillow on Friday night and they're exhausted, They feel like they gave the companies an honest week's work, and they have. They worked really hard. But it doesn't mean they worked on the things that move the needle to drive new business. They didn't fill the pipeline. They didn't advance. They didn't close. So I'll give you two ends of the spectrum before we even get into selling skills and being late and storytelling and not owning our process. Just those two things. Either they don't know how, or they spend a ridiculous amount of time not selling.
So I've got a handful of other pitfalls that are top of my mind, by the way.
Yeah, bring them on.
To surface. I even have the article in front of me. I'm not going to lie. That's the great thing about a virtual interview. But one that stands out to me, and I've done this, is I've become a prisoner of hope with current opportunities that I got enamored with that might not work out, and I missed out on laying the groundwork for the future. And is there any color you'd add to the pitfall of becoming a prisoner of hope?
Yeah, I love the term prisoner of hope, and let me give credit where credit is due, as I did in the book. I got that expression from a gentleman named Tom Riley, who is an outstanding sales trainer. In fact, I now do a little work with his son, Paul, who's an outstanding human being. Tom Riley had a book, Value Added Selling, and in that book, he talked about becoming when I teach this in a workshop, I have a stock photo of a woman with her fingers crossed like this, prisoner of hope. This is the salesperson, and you started going down the path, Chris. This is the salesperson who has the one or two big deals in their pipeline. And instead of doing the responsible thing, which would be keep hunting, turning over more rocks, pursue new opportunities, they become like all laser locked or OCD on those handful of big deals. And they pray over them, which isn't a bad thing. And they obsess over them. And every day they try to move that thing forward, and they nag and they push and they wait, and they're hopeful that deal will come to fruition and close. And I get it. We want to try to get every deal over the finish line. But I often see prisoners of hope starve, because hope is a 4-letter word, right? And there's some 4-letter words, and I'm not going to use them here on your show, that we shouldn't use. And I would add hope to that category. It's great to have big deals. It's great to try to move them forward. We should give them lots of attention, as long as the opportunity cost isn't that we don't work other deals and accounts and work to create. But that's the prisoner of hope. And it's just a trap we fall into, because we get in love with a couple opportunities in the pipeline. So we become like prisoners that those are going to come together for us. And that's really foolish. It's not responsible.
I love your metaphor of turning over rocks, because personally, as a kid, I used to love to turn over rocks, looking for bugs, finding new bugs. Oh my gosh. So guys, keep turning over those rocks.
Turn them over. Absolutely.
Don't get comfortable. Now, another pitfall is not knowing the sales story. And we're going to double click into the sales story and how to tell a good sales story, the mechanics of that after. But can you just talk to it conceptually? Like, what does that mean to someone who doesn't have their sales story down?
Yeah, I love that you want to double click on it in later in this conversation. I'll go there with you. But at the highest level, when I say we don't have a story, it means we're boring and we don't have a compelling value proposition or a pitch. And if you're prospecting, you need to get someone's attention in a few seconds, in a voicemail, in a live phone call, in a LinkedIn note, in an email. And most salespeople don't have the kind of message that stops a prospect in their tracks and has them say something like, now that's interesting. I've got those issues, or I'm pressured to achieve those results. I want to know more from you. Most of our language that we deploy is boring because it's self-focused, or it's product focused, or it's company focused. And I'll give one quick example, and then we can come back to this later. If you go to a lot of companies' About Us page on their website, you see this long chronology of the history of who founded the company, and then what they did, and what buildings they built, and what companies they acquired, and now they brag about their size and their footprint, and it's all wonderful. Even their values, it's all nice. But is any of that about the customer? Is any of that compelling about the value we create in the marketplace and the problems we solve, right? Or the results we achieve? No, it's all self-focused nonsense. We're so great. Here's our history. Here's our product. Here's our engineers. Here's our patents. Here's our unique, whatever. It's all self-absorbed. And that's where I'm going with that. If you are going to develop new business, your most important sales weapon is your story. And you need a value-packed, customer issue and customer outcome focused differentiating message. So there's a good teaser, I guess. Yeah.
That is a great teaser. And if you're getting value so far, of course, as we said before, give a like button, a love tap. More people will be able to see this video because the algorithm loves that. Also, stay tuned for the sales weapons, how to deploy them. But before that, let's continue on these pitfalls, because it's really important to have an idea of like what not to do, and then
Absolutely.
actually works.
Well, Chris, I'll just jump in. That's often
Yeah.
why when I'm doing a workshop or I have a new engagement, I'll go right to this list in the beginning to level the playing field and deliver a wake-up call. Because unless we're willing to admit these are the 3 or 4 big things that are hindering my performance, that are preventing me from having a breakthrough success, no one's really being honest. And usually when you show them this list, everyone's like, yeah, you got me on these 3 or 4. You're right. And then they're much more open and receptive to being coached on, okay, well, what are the fixes to those things? Because the truth is, and I say this every time I deliver this message, don't shoot the messenger. Like, don't kill me. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm telling you these 16 things I see everywhere. So let's pick the 3 or 4 that you're committing these sins and they're hurting you, so you can identify them and then get over the hump and start applying the fixes.
It all starts with self-awareness in sales and in life, right? And when you can acknowledge like a blind spot, boom, that leads to quantum leaps in performance. So that's why this list, it's like a mirror. And guys, we're all human. We struggle with the same things. You're not alone if you're on this list and you see something stand out. Don't feel bad. Let's just make changes. And we haven't gotten to some of the 2 big ones that I struggle with, but we'll get there. But before that, one pitfall is not having a good target list, right? It's like having a map in the wrong direction. Like, can you speak more to that one?
Yeah, it's one of the key issues, and it's the first thing I talk about when we start actually applying the fixes in coaching. If you're going to hunt, if you're going to be proactive, you need a list, a strategic, finite, workable list of both existing customers, if you manage a book of business or a portfolio or territory, and not just all your customers, but the ones that are most growable. So you need a strategic list of those accounts. And if you're hunting new logos, net new business, you obviously need a list of ideal profile prospects that you're committed to pursuing. And what I'll tell you that shocks me is that I meet with so many salespeople and sales teams that do not have a strategic, finite, written, workable list of accounts that they're committed to proactively pursuing. And every word I just said is intentional. A list of strategic, which means thinking went into it, finite, because you can't call the whole phone book. You can market to thousands. You can automated message and spam thousands. You can't personally prospect to thousands. That's not feasible. It takes multiple shots to get in, multiple touches. You earn meetings with perseverance and creativity. So finite. Yes. Like in my own career, the biggest success came when I was like a sniper and I hand-picked strategic target accounts, right? Not just shotgunning everywhere. So strategic, good thinking, finite, workable, right? Enough that you can keep working them over and over and over again, but not so many you can't get to them. And then people laugh at me today when I say, you need a written list. Like, come on, Mike, written? We've got a cloud. We got an iPad. We got 7 CRMs. I'm like, I get it. I'm just going to tell you what I see. When I go into a company and I meet the top salesperson, like the #1 producer, and I say, hey, show me your list. Who are you targeting right now? In a nanosecond, they're handing me a little exported spreadsheet that's got 14 names on it, or they point me over to the little whiteboard on their cubicle wall, and they're like, Mike, I'm going after these 9 people right now, or these 19, whatever the right number is for that type of industry. Wow. Or they got it on a legal pad. Like they're working the written, finite, strategic list. When I go talk to an underperformer, and I'm like, hey, let me see your list. Who are you going after? They open up the CRM and they scroll through 19 pages, 400 accounts. And I'm like, you're not working those accounts. Those are assigned to you, but you're not working. Show me who you're targeting. So you got to have a strategic, finite, workable written list. It's the first step in a successful sales attack. Like every week, you should not be entrepreneurial, making up a new strategy on the fly. You need to be executing the strategy where on the front end, and it's helpful if you get your direct boss involved in helping you flesh out this list of your existing accounts, which deserve more of your time and attention, that are growable, even if you don't like them. My coaching is always stop over-serving, babysitting your favorite customers, because they're already buying everything from you. They probably can't buy anymore. Every minute you spend with them is a minute you're not spending with a growable customer. But we default to seeing our friends because it makes us feel good. And we say stuff like, well, they trust me, they need me. If I don't do it, who will? I got to take care of them. I don't want to lose them. There's competition. And I get all that. But most of us overserve our best customers. We don't spend enough time with the difficult ones. And then prospecting, nobody wants to prospect. So if you're not ready to go with a good, defined, researched, ready to attack list, you're never going to do it. And that's why that's on that list. You got to have that list. The first step, if you're going hunting, what's the first question? Well, what are we hunting? Because that affects what you wear and what ammunition you need. And similarly in sales, how do I help you with your story? How do we have a customer issue focused story if we don't understand the types of customers we're pursuing? Does that make sense, Chris? Is that fair?
It makes total sense. And it's a good reminder for me in my current role to step back. I'm the third salesperson hired in this global startup, but very nimble in the US, right? That we started in Korea and came to the US. And so just, yeah, like a group of almost like 18 folks in the US. And it's easy, and I see it with myself and others, to bring on a lot of logos, but these aren't like monster deals, right? Like take a step back. Who's really our ideal customer profile that can generate you know what ton of revenue and maybe lessen the number of targets, right? But make them very intentional, and don't spend too much time just like farming or just babysitting customers that don't have much upside. I've found actually as well that some of my current customers, whether it's in this role or in past roles, that complained the most too and took the most of my time, spent the less, and they had the least upside. So what you said totally resonated. I think there's a lot of meat packed into what you just said.
Well, let me put a giant exclamation mark, because I love how you just framed that. Friends, listen to me. I mean, listen, if you zoned out, zone back in. This is sales. We don't get paid to do work. You don't get paid to drive miles or kilometers or punch a clock or get to inbox 0 or clean up the floor, the mess. You get paid to drive results. Your job in sales is to increase revenue. Again, it's not to babysit. It's not to caretake. Even if your title is territory manager or account manager, it's not your job. Your job is to grow revenue, and that's where you have to put your time and your attention. So the target list is what helps you stay radically focused on the accounts or potential accounts, prospects, where you're going to make money. That's what you must do, is keep focused on your primary job.
That was really well summarized. A great exclamation point. I felt like it was a fireside chat and we just all needed to lead in there. Our job's to drive top line revenue. And like you said, it's not about the total number of hours. In fact, the great news for people getting into sales is you can be working like technically 20 hours, but deliver incredible outcomes and make deep into the 6 figures and beyond if you're focused on the right people and driving outcomes, which is pretty amazing. So there's quite a few more pitfalls that I wanted to get to, as many as we can while still leaving time.
All right, I'm going to give shorter answers to leave some more time. Go ahead.
These are so great. Like we could go for 2 hours here. But another one, I mean, we could touch on this one quickly, right? But you're late to the party and you're playing an already in progress game. I've certainly experienced that. Can you speak to that scenario, and like, what do you do when you find yourself in that scenario where you're late to the party?
Well, it stinks. And you're late to the party because you're living in a reactive mode. You're not proactively working your target list. So by the time you show up, the customer's gone down their path shopping, or worse, they're already having conversations with your more proactive competitor who wasn't sitting on his or her ass. They were out making meetings and leading the customer down a path. So you show up late, you're in a disadvantaged position. You can't be the value creator, the consultant, because you're playing someone else's game. And it often comes down to price, and you get commoditized. And I'm just going to say this, and I don't care if I get hate mail for this. The Challenger sale, for all its goodness, right? That statistic that became ridiculously popular, that today's buyer goes 57% through their buying process before they engage a salesperson. That's bullshit. It's wrong. It's a straw man statistic. I don't care what data they prove. The only time the customer gets that far down their buying process without talking to a salesperson is when you, the salesperson, are not pursuing them, looking for meetings to help guide them along their path. So by the time they finally call you, they already have their decision criteria. Someone else has already led them down a path, and you're just a vendor who's doing a dog and pony show or offering a price. Being late to the party is deadly.
Yeah, great point there. And that brings me to our next pitfall, which seems obvious, but I might ask you to flesh it out a little more. you're not going to be successful if you have a negative and pessimistic attitude. You need to be positive. Maybe the question is, why is positivity so important for being successful in sales?
I could answer that like 19 ways. I'm just going to ask a simple question. Can anyone think of someone in their life who is highly successful, who sees themselves as a victim with a negative outlook? And the answer is no, because there are no super successful people, and definitely not in sales. So that's why you have to maintain positivity, because no one wants to see you if you're negative, Nelly. And if you're always pointing your finger and you're blaming the company, you're blaming the competitor, you're blaming your mother, you're blaming Obama, you're blaming Trump. Now we blame Biden. It doesn't matter. Like, you got to own it. So negativity doesn't work. And you gotta be positive, and you got to believe it's going to happen. You got to own the outcome. Excuse making and negativity is not going to get you anywhere.
Great point. Owning the outcome and being responsible, I truly believe, is the foundation of high performance, because otherwise you're a victim and life just happens to you.
Absolutely.
Man, there's so much personal power in taking responsibility, even for things in our life, like even go back to childhood, like trauma and different things. If you can, and that's kind of deep, so I got to be careful I don't go on that tangent, and maybe this is the personal growth side coming in. But if you can take responsibility even for things that you thought you were blaming other people and happened to you, then man, the world opens up. So great point. Next one, you are guilty of fake or pitiful. Love that word, phone effort. How about that one?
I don't even think we need to explain it. You don't have business because you're not trying to use the phone, period. And today, there's a lot of idiots in my industry that are telling you the phone is dead. And they've been saying this for like 15 years. The phone works just great if you know how to use it. In fact, it works better than ever because so few people use it, and those that do don't use it well. Everyone is spamming you. Everyone's on LinkedIn with automated messages. You get email, constant contact, drip campaigns. I get it. That's all nice. The phone is the most precise weapon to deliver the message and to secure a meeting. It needs to be part of the repertoire. And those of you that tell you it doesn't work, it's only because they're trying to sell you social selling, training, or something else. You should use this is how I say it all the time, Chris. Use every ethical, appropriate, effective means necessary when prospecting. Jeb Blunt says, send smoke signals if you have to, right? Use a carrier pigeon. Pick up the phone. Send snail mail. Use dimensional pieces. Use social channels. Get referrals. Email, video, all of it. But the phone, don't ignore it.
Amen. The Church of Sales. Next one is you're not likable or adapting your buyer style. That second piece is key. Or you have low emotional intelligence, right? And so, can you flesh out basically what a good emotional intelligence and the adapting to a buyer style looks like in sales?
Yeah, I mean, at the simplest level, right? We all know this phrase: people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And EQ, emotional intelligence, is huge, much more important than IQ when it comes to sales success. And it's managing your own emotions and your communication style and how you're perceived. And at the simplest level, those of us with high EQ read the situation, we read the culture, we read the buyer, and we slightly adapt, not our integrity. And we're not trying to be a chameleon here or manipulate, but just as good communicators, sometimes when you're with a very deliberate, analytical CFO who cares about risk and process and wants to review a checklist, maybe we should slow down. And I almost can't talk that slow like I just did, but when you're with someone who goes slow, you slow down. And when you're with someone who wants data, you provide data. I don't care if you're this wild, extroverted, unorganized salesperson, you recognize the environment and you adapt to the person so they can hear you. And it's really important. So adapting helps you become more likable and more trustworthy, and people hear you better. It's that simple.
People do buy from people they like. And I remember when I was at Google Cloud interviewing for a field sales role, I was going from inside sales to field. I had an interview with the key account director of Uber. And I said, what are your top, not top tips, that sounds so cheesy. I framed it differently, I promise, but to being successful at your level. And as she said, be a chameleon. And it's really what you're describing, like adapt to different people.
That's so great.
So you mentioned the analytical CFO, and I'm pretty sure I thought this was on your list, but on the article, I don't think it's showing up. But being overly analytical, right? And this being personal here is something that I've struggled with: over analytical, analysis paralysis, instead of having a bias for action. Wasn't that a thing on your list? I thought. And could you flesh it out if it was?
Ask me the specific question. What you want me to tackle real quickly here?
Yeah, wasn't being overly analytical one of the pitfalls, or was that like a sub pitfall?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
What I'm saying there when it comes to prospecting, it's a great question, is sometimes people who are perfectionistic and scared of making mistakes because they're so analytical, they want to be right. They struggle with prospecting because sometimes in prospecting you do this and you sound like an idiot and you're not perfect and you stumble and bumble. And if you really are uncomfortable with that, or uncomfortable with conflict, or rejection, being told no, you will struggle when it comes to hunting and being proactive in sales, because you got to push past resistance, and there is going to be conflict, and you will screw up. You're not building a bridge, right? Or trying to align a moonshot. It's okay to screw up when you're in sales. You're not the engineer. And people who have that perfectionistic tendency tend to have analysis paralysis, and they never want to get into action because their script isn't perfect, or they're afraid they don't have all the information. These are the people that will do an hour of pre-call research before making a prospecting call.
Yes.
Like I understand doing legit prep and being really prepared when you're going to go have a meeting with somebody, but you don't do an hour of research before you make a prospecting call that's likely going to end up in voicemail. Like that's a sign of call reluctance because you're a perfectionist. Does that explanation kind of help with your question?
That totally makes sense. It's so important to have a bias for action and not over research. I remember a time where I prepared for a discovery call with a customer, and I studied up on their Data V product. And the first thing the CEO says is, we've decided to move away from Data V and become a services company. All my research out the window, and I had to adapt. So
it's great.
I love what you're saying there. I think it's a key point. And I think I might have got this from your book somehow, but just sales is kind of messy. It gets a little sloppy, and we have to be okay with that. And I'm a serial perfectionist. So I think sales has actually helped develop me as a person in that way. Like demanding
that's awesome.
that I'm
great recognition. That's really great awareness, honestly. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. And that's one thing I would say, Mike, and we'll move to the sales weapons, because I know you actually have a meeting in person you got to get to.
I do.
Have about 7 minutes.
I know. I'm even wearing like a real shirt today to go meet someone in my town. So that's, it's not a virtual day. It's great.
Yeah. And this is special too, by the way. I wore a collared shirt. Usually I'm in a t-shirt.
Thank you.
But so we dress to the nines. So let's talk about the sales weapons as we wrap up. Realistically, we got about 7 minutes, right? And I know, do you think the sales story is the place to start? We've alluded to it before, but maybe could you give the architecture of a strong sales story?
Great question. Yeah, your story is your most important weapon when you're selling, because it has incredible application. You use your story all the time. It's in all of your weapons. Like your messaging is in your voicemails, it's in your emails, it's in your PowerPoint slides, it's in your sales calls, it's in your proposals. If your story stinks, you're screwed. Can I just say it? Like, you're screwed. Everything is hard. But if your story is great, everything about sales is easier. You have confidence, you get people's attention, you change the dynamic of how they perceive you because you're leading in with things that matter to them. So their defenses come down, right? Instead of getting the resistance, the Heisman, they're like, oh, you help people like me that have these challenges? I have those. I want to talk to you. So when your story's great, you justify your price, you have confidence, all this stuff happens. You got to have great messaging. And as I said earlier, most sellers don't. Most companies don't. You asked me about the architecture. The most important part of your story, and everything I'm about to say can be found in chapter 8 in New Sales Simplified, or in chapter 10 in my latest book, Sales Truth.
And again, guys, it's linked in the description, and I encourage you to check it out. I've read it myself, but go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. The key to your story is leading in with what's already on the mind of your customer. They have problems they want solved. They have pains they would like removed. They have liabilities they would like mitigated. There are better results that they want to achieve. All of those are outcomes. Okay. So the strongest way I can say it, if you want to increase the power of your story, to not be commoditized, to get more meetings, to justify your price, to stop people on their tracks. So they go, I want to talk to you. I want to know more. You need messaging that leads in with the stuff that matters to the prospect or the customer. What issues are you addressing and what outcomes are you achieving? And in the book and in my online course, Your Sales Story, I walk you through a framework and I help you create this thing I call a bridge line that bridges you into talking about or writing about the issues you address and the outcomes you achieve, and forcibly stops you from saying, we're so great, we're so big, here's our company history, take a look at our buildings, here are our patents, we're made in America, here's our deal. And instead you lead in by helping explain the value you create, because you do address issues and you do create outcomes. So that's the best way at the highest level I could say. You've got to lead with how you help, why they actually come to you, and then you can follow along with what it is you sell and why what you sell is better and different. But the key is leading in with, again, the issues that you address for customers and the outcomes that you achieve. And the challenge is, Chris, it's not natural. And if someone said to you, hey, Chris, what do you do? Or Mike, tell me about your business. What do you do? The easy reflex, non-helpful answers. Oh man, thanks for asking. I've got 3 #1 Amazon best-selling books, and I'm a sales trainer. I love helping salespeople win more new sales. Like, here's all the stuff people say about me, and here's all my offerings. I got workshops, I got videos, I do speaking, I do cohorts. Sounds great. My mom's probably really proud if I was to say that. I got books, I got this. But the truth is, every damn thing I just said was boring and self-focused and about me. If I pivoted and said, hey, Chris, thanks for asking. A lot of software as a service companies come looking to me when they're frustrated. Their sales team sits on their butt waiting for a lead, and they're tired of them whining about the SDRs not creating good appointments. And then when they get in deals, they demo first and get commoditized, and they don't own their sales process. And I help them create a team of proficient hunters that create opportunities and increase win rates. And if you went back and replayed, if you're listening to the recording this, the last 40 seconds, you will see the contrast between a self-focused, boring, I do this, we're so great message versus people like you look to me when they have this problem, they want this result, they're challenged by this, they want to have this outcome. Night and day. I mean, I can't say it any clearer than I did in the last minute or so here. That's the architecture of a great, compelling sales story.
So we have the blueprint and the architecture of a great sales story, and we can use that and deploy it through email, cold calls, which Mike said are clearly very important still, despite what people might say. And we can use it for LinkedIn and, of course, in a voicemail too. Now we have, speaking of 2 minutes. So I just want to wrap it up here with perhaps, there's a million things we could talk about, but an example of like a cold call, like how you'd open a call and what, like even as like a sales story might look like in a cold call. If you want, we've got 2 minutes. We think we can do that real. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think to protect my clients, I'll just use my own story again, because I think it's easier. So let's just deal with the cold call. And in the 2 minutes we've got, I'll just unpack this, right? The reality is you're interrupting somebody. So you need to acknowledge that you're interrupting them and find a way to get by that. And in chapter 9 of New Sales Simplified and chapter 11 of Sales Truth, you've got my best help for prospecting. And also on my website, there is a free guide right on the homepage with 6 tips to power up your prospecting. And there's a link to a really cool video there. So forgive the shameless plug, but the New Sales Simplified and Sales Truth both have chapters on prospecting. And there's a free guide on my site and a podcast episode on the topic. But you got to acknowledge the interruption. And then I think once you do that and you've kind of bought a second for yourself, I believe you have 10 to 15 seconds at most to make an impression, to drip what I call a value nugget, to intrigue the heck out of them, to give them a reason to say yes when you ask them to meet with you. So in my case, I'll go back to the software as a service example, so I don't have to keep mixing illustrations. So if I'm cold calling a CEO of a small SaaS company or a senior VP or CRO, right? And I'm saying, hey, listen, I'm helping a lot of chief revenue officers who are frustrated with their sales teams because they're living in reactive mode and they're always whining about lack of opportunities being provided by inbound marketing or SDRs. And a lot of times I'm helping them create proficient hunters who own their process and drive more wins, so they're not getting commoditized and demoing first. What I just did basically was I jammed about 4, maybe 5 issues in 15 seconds of ways I'm helping people exactly like the person I'm talking to. So that's how I use the story. I've now warmed them up. I've now identified to them that I'm an expert and that I address the issues they probably have. And then from there, I'm immediately going to ask them, hey, can we spend a few minutes together? Grab your calendar. I'd love to hear what you're doing and where you'd like to see your sales team improve. And I can share with you some ways I'm helping other SaaS companies like drive record results. And I say, get your calendar. Yeah.
Talk about a great close. And speaking of closing, we're at time. We need to get you to your next meeting. So I'm going to wrap this up. There's so many nuggets we could have tapped into beyond this, but this was power packed, guys. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to check out Mike's book. In the description, New Sales Simplified. And I linked his other books, True, including Sales Truth and Sales Management Simplified. Sorry, Mike, if I wasn't exactly right on the sales management title, but it's all in there. I'm going to link his website so you can, go through creating your own story. It's not a shameless plug. There's a lot of value. So I know it's going to help a lot of people. Mike, I just wanted to finish by thanking you for your time and for your generosity and sharing your insight. This was a fun conversation.
Oh, you're great. What a great show. And you ask amazing questions. I hope your audience got value, and thanks for the opportunity to visit.
Yeah, we're definitely going to stay in touch, and I look forward to the next round as you write more books and make a bigger impact. Can't wait to have you on again. All the best to you guys. Happy selling and happy living.